If you're going to be a good coach, you have to learn how to actively listen. Coaching Habit is a great book to help you do this. It teaches you how to listen because it teaches you how to ask questions. And when you ask questions, you naturally have to listen. And so that's a great first step. And many team leads do this and don't even realize it's coaching. Giving people the space to be more open with who they are, with what needs they have, with skills that are maybe deficient, and helping fill that. Coaching was a great tool to help more women get to where they want to be in the early stages of their career.
Hi, welcome to Wisdom from the Helm, where we go beyond the typical highlight reels of real estate's most trusted women to reveal the secrets of their success, not just in business, but also in life. We're your hosts, Danielle Wilkie and Heather Frick. And today we're thrilled to welcome Elizabeth Convery, a founding coach of the Helm, and so much more. Elizabeth is an entrepreneur, she's a Navy wife, and a real estate expert committed to empowering women, which we love. She founded Elizabeth Convery LLC and launched the Confident Agent Program, which helps women advance their careers and build six-figure businesses. And over 10 years ago, she founded Very Real Estate, which is a boutique firm in Philadelphia that has become a top-ranked team nationwide. She focuses on guiding women to transform their mindsets and grow their incomes. And she's got a degree from both Cornell and St. Joseph's University. And she now lives in Washington, D.C. with her wonderful husband, Chip, and her adorable 2 children. Elizabeth, we're so glad you're here.
Thanks for having me. I love spending time with you ladies. It's always inspiring.
So awesome. Well, we're just going to dive right in. Heather, let's do it.
All right. Well, Elizabeth, tell us about, we talked a lot. You got an impressive background. You're doing so many things. We want to hear a little bit about your coaching. Tell us how you just got into coaching. How did that start? Tell us about that journey.
Yeah. So it was COVID. It was early 2020. I remember the exact moment I got into coaching. I was having a conversation with my coach. My son, Jack, was 4 months old at the time. My husband, Chip, is in the Navy. He was stationed at the Naval War College in Rhode Island. We set him up with a fabulous, little apartment on an Amtrak line so that he could come home on the weekends to Philadelphia where we were living, and Jack and I could go up there during the week as needed. And COVID happened, and Chip got locked down in Rhode Island, and I was locked down in Philadelphia with our 4-month-old son. And I was having a conversation with my coach, and I said, I am rocked, and I don't care what I need to do, but I need to reunite my family as soon as this pandemic allows it. And my entire business and my whole career is focused geographically in Philadelphia. And I just don't think that my life is going to be there for much longer because my life had changed so much, right? I got married a year before. We had a baby very quickly, all of these things. And I said, how am I going to do this? And she said, how comfortable are you becoming a coach? I said, I don't think I am, but I'm going to have to figure this out. So I got into coaching because I wanted to empower my own team to run my book of business and build their own book of business, which then it's funny how your life journey then takes you onto an entirely new path where now I am a coach most of my time.
Mm-hmm.
Wow.
That's
how you got into it. First of all, I think a lot of people think that it's impossible to do what you just described. It's impossible to run a business not in the same town. It's impossible to actually have a coaching business while also running a real estate business. I'm sure everyone's thinking, Elizabeth, how did you do that? Is that really possible? Come on.
It's possible. I'm living proof of it, but it takes a lot of learning about yourself, prioritizing what truly matters, learning to say no, setting boundaries and keeping them, and really coming into confidence in yourself, which is truly confidence. The definition of this is trusting your own abilities to make things happen, right? So I had to trust myself that I could achieve the path that I wanted.
Everything you just said, so much learning, so much, skill building, it sounds like. You mentioned earlier that you have a coach. Tell us a little bit about how coaches have served you, right? How have you had your own coaching experiences and leaned on coaches to get where you are today and to continue this path?
Yeah, so I have had a coach my entire career. I didn't know it was a coach when I worked in corporate America, right? So you think about it, I started my career in corporate America and I was in it for about 8 years before I went to grad school and then, started my own business. And in corporate life, I was always assigned a mentor who is a version of a coach, right? I was sent to conferences, which were ways in which I would get involved in, small group coaching, trainings, whatever it might be. I just didn't know it was called coaching at the time. But when I started my own business, I didn't have that sort of safety net of people around me who were telling me that I needed help, right? I was an entrepreneur. I was the person making all the decisions. And I remember that I got my first coach within the first year of being on my own because I already felt burnout. And a girlfriend of mine who was also an entrepreneur said, you really should think about hiring a coach. I'm like, tell me more about that. So through the seasons of my business in the last, 12 years that I've been an entrepreneur, I've had various different coaches for whatever stage I was in. So the first coach was a sales trainer, taught me how to sell, really taught me how to go through a sales system, identify pain, sell your product, which was yourself. And then I transitioned into a more of a group coaching model where I worked in an accelerator with other small business owners to take our small business and get it to $1 million mark. And then I found my latest coach, Sherry, who I've had for 5 years now, who helps small business owners throughout various industries grow personally, because that's when I really learned that the growth that I have in myself is what will propel my career forward.
So cool. One thing that I have always really liked about you, Elizabeth, is your transition from corporate America to real estate. I think a lot of people in corporate America dream about it, and then they get here and they're like, wait a minute, that all of a sudden that like biweekly paycheck looked really, really good. So
Sometimes
can
it
you talk?
still does, Danielle.
Yeah. Oh, God. I know. I know. I dream about it. But but I was curious, is like, how did you decide to make that transition? And then what things have you done to enable that to be a successful one? Because it's a hard one.
Oh, it's so hard. And looking back on my 20-year career, I've now spent more time on my own than I have working for somebody else. So I left corporate America because I was on a great career trajectory. I mean, I really was enjoying what I was doing. I was working in commercial real estate. But I sort of got to this point where the work wasn't getting me out of bed anymore. I don't know if you can relate to that, right? Like you were good at it. I was good at it. I was able to, make the paycheck, meet the goals, do all the things. But I remember like my alarm would go off and I'd be like, oh gosh, it's only Tuesday. Right. And so I knew that there was something that was a little off. And I was passed over for a promotion. And I think that's when my eyes started to really open because I was doing all the things, right? But my career was in the hands of somebody else. And then there was a pivotal moment in which I didn't like an interaction that my boss had with one of our clients. And I remember I had had a mentor who told me, the natural career progression is that you become your boss one day, right? And your boss becomes their boss. And I just didn't see in that moment becoming my boss. And that's what I knew I needed to make a change. And I actually quit my job without a plan, which anybody who knows me, which both of you do, I'm not a person to not have a plan. I am so strategic in my life. I think that that's what has helped me to get to where I am. I see a vision. I can break it down into tiny steps. I get there, right? Didn't really have much of a vision. I mean, I remember I thought, something's got to be better than this. And again, I think that's the confidence, right? I knew I had the ability to make something happen. I just didn't know what that something was.
Wow.
Did it feel risky at the time, or did that feel just like, yeah, this is what I'm going to do? Do you remember that feeling?
It felt exhilarating, Heather. It felt so exciting. And I also was 29 at the time. So I didn't have a lot of baggage that I have. I shouldn't say baggage that I have now. My God, that's terrible. Like my husband, my kids, my houses, like, baggage. But, there's things that weigh you down when you're making decisions. Like I could wade through risk a lot easier because it was just sort of me and my savings account, right? That was it. It wasn't decisions that I had to make with all the other factors in mind.
Totally makes sense. Yeah. And just having that confidence. I mean, that that seems like the game changer.
I also have a father who is he's a huge fan of mine and I of him, right? We've just like grown. I've been so lucky to have two parents who are so engaged, right? But my father built his career in corporate America, right? And he was in the insurance industry and he, headed a division, kind of went all the way, very high up. And he was laid off in his 50s. And I remember it really impacted our family. And as a result of that, I think that he instilled in me this belief that I can do it without the support, of a corporate structure. And I remember when I was in my last corporate job and I was passed over for the promotion, I would call him all the time and I'm crying and like, oh, Dad, what do I do? He said, Elizabeth, I dare you to do it. I dare you to jump out of corporate America. And it was kind of a push that I really needed. And I think he knew I needed it. And now looking back, even through market cycles that I've gone through, on my own in the last 12 years, I think even the last 2 years in real estate have been so incredibly challenging. I know that I can make it because I believe and see that pattern of setting a goal and hitting it. And so it's been an interesting ride, I will say. I've joked with many that I would now be the worst corporate employee that anybody has ever had. Because I'm like, what? You want me to show up at like a certain time at my desk? You mean I can't go pick up my kids at like 4 p.m? Stand on a soccer field with my cell phone? What?
Yeah, totally. You've crafted a life that fits your life.
Sure.
And your business, and that feels so good. It would be crazy to go back at this point, right?
Sure, but I will say to your original point, Danielle, the biweekly paycheck sometimes does look very nice. I mean, it just looks like a good idea until I start to peel away that onion and I'm like, ooh. But then I would have to answer to somebody other than myself.
Yeah. Spoken like a true entrepreneur.
Building that parachute on the way down, as they say, right?
That's right. Okay. I was thinking about feedback. This is something that in corporate America there's a lot of feedback all the time. Entrepreneurially, not always, it gets a little harder because you're on your own, you're running your own business, or you're the one at the top. I'm curious overall how your relationship with feedback at work has just evolved over time, leaving, from that corporate world into the world of entrepreneurship, and the way you think about it, react to it, process it, maybe even invite it. Like, how has that evolved for you?
Yeah. So in corporate life, as we all know, right, feedback is on a schedule.
Mm-hmm.
And it's usually something that you have to input yourself, and then your manager has a say in it. And then, you maybe get a quarterly review. And then if you're lucky, you get a raise and a bonus at the end of the year, whatever it is. In corporate life or in entrepreneurial life, you have to really seek it out. And I was so afraid to seek it out for probably the first 7 years of my entrepreneurial journey. I was terrified to ask for feedback, maybe because I didn't want the answer. I was afraid that maybe I wasn't doing the job that I thought I was. I was getting feedback organically, right? Where a client would say, oh gosh, it was so wonderful to work with you. You did a great job. But when it came to asking for like a testimonial, I would never ask for that. I didn't want anybody to pat me on the back. I felt very bizarre about that. And I don't know if that's something that women, we're challenged sometimes with patting ourselves on the back. So we certainly don't want to ask others to do it. But as my career has evolved, I have embraced feedback because I look at it as a learning tool. And so I've had to get more comfortable with asking for it. And by getting more comfortable, I had to be ready to duck if it was bad, right? And be able to sort of overcome, like, oh, you didn't have the experience I thought you had. I initially took that feedback and I would retreat and I would really be down on myself about things that were negative. And then I spun it around and I thought, what can I learn from this? And I got very curious about it. And now I'm like a feedback ninja. I'm always asking for it. I mean, I will follow up with clients in coaching, sort of midway through whatever program we're in and say, what's working? What's not working? With my team, I'm constantly asking them, what can we do better? How can we improve? And so for me, I think it's come full circle in 20 years.
I love that.
How do you bring that into your clients, right? Because I would imagine a lot of the women and people that you're coaching felt the way that you might have in the beginning, right? Like not wanting it or cringing. Like, how do you help the people that you're coaching kind of get more comfortable or progress towards where you are now?
Sure. You're so right, Heather. I feel like so many women, particularly, we are not good at asking for this. So like everything that I do, I baby step into it. And I have them actually start asking for feedback from the people that they love the most. So I'll say to them, what I want you to do is I want you to call or text, if you're more comfortable, 3 people who know you really well and have them tell you 3 things that they think that you do great. And then I have them come back to me and I say, well, what did that feel like? What did you learn? What patterns did you see? So that's where you're creating for them that curiosity, right? Mm-hmm. And then I'll say, okay, we did that with our 3 closest friends. Let's now do it with our 3 best clients and step into that. And so it's sort of these layers of like trying baby steps into it. And by the time they get to the sort of the outer rim of it, right, asking for feedback in real time, they're much more comfortable. They've built that muscle memory.
I wanted to know, Elizabeth, a little more about your journey about getting into coaching. I'm sure a lot of people listening are like coach curious for sure. It seems like a cool idea. I think it's something I might be interested in. Tell us a little bit about, that journey for you, what it's like getting into coaching, sort of the pros and the cons and the like what's been great and what's been hard, and maybe any kind of advice you'd have for somebody who's considering this as a path for them.
It's a great question. Coaching, I think, teaches you the main thing to learn when you're becoming a coach is how to listen. And we're in a business where we don't do a lot of listening. We're salespeople. We can get out there and we'll tell you every quality about this house and why you should buy it and how you can finance it and all these things. But if you're going to be a good coach, you have to learn, I think the first step is to learn how to actively listen. And there's a great book to help you do this. This is one of the books. I mean, I'm always reading books. You know this. I'm a ferocious reader. It's called The Coaching Habit. Coaching Habit is fantastic. It teaches you how to listen because it teaches you how to ask questions. And when you ask questions, you naturally have to listen. And so that's a great first step. If you're thinking about becoming a coach, find out if you actually like to listen. Not everybody does, right? Coaching is not for everyone. The way that I have become a coach has been first out of necessity, right? It was out of necessity. I had to learn how to empower my team. And many team leads do this and don't even realize it's coaching, right? Giving people the space to be more open with who they are, with what needs they have, with skills that are maybe deficient. And helping sort of fill that. And so the journey for me came one of necessity, then for my team, and then realizing that I wanted to do more. And coaching was a great tool for me to help more women get to where they want to be without growing my own team. And it again forced me to listen, right? Listen to the marketplace. I did a ton of research in building my coaching platform to see what the holes were that needed to be plugged in the coaching field, particularly for women in the early stages of their career.
What'd you find?
I found a lot of common threads, and the common threads were a few things. One, women thought that they were the only ones that had these issues because we have a comparison culture, right? Second, women are really keen to learn and they'll try anything, but also they're really hard on themselves. So if they try something and it doesn't work, they think that they're the failure. They don't look internally that maybe the thing that they were doing was just not aligned with who they truly are, wasn't authentic enough for them, right? And I felt the common thread of the need for others. Real estate is an industry that is incredibly lonely. It can be incredibly lonely, especially post-pandemic, right? Where we're working in our houses. We've gotten used to working in our houses. We're going into the office maybe every so often for meetings. But that sense of community, so that women could have a safe space to be themselves and be nurtured and grow together, was a common thread that I learned.
If you could go back and give advice to the person who's starting her coaching business now, based on where you're at, what advice would you have for her? Like, what did you learn that would be helpful at this point?
I would say to her, trust your instincts. Don't doubt yourself that you're not good enough to be a coach, that you don't know enough to be a coach. And step forward slowly into coaching. And what I mean by that is, I think in real estate, especially if you're someone like me who came from a very successful team background, I have a big sales business. I didn't get there overnight. So you have to be patient and recognize that you're not going to go from 0 to 100 clients in a year. Go from 0 to 1. Go from 1 to 5. Go from 5 to 10, and give yourself grace. And I wish that is something that someone had told me, because when I started in coaching and created a business around it, oh my gosh, I could not believe I wasn't further along in it. I'm like, what do you mean? I'm really good at this. Like, where are all these clients? Why aren't they here? And I remember sitting with that, and I'm like, Elizabeth, get over yourself. You are good. Keep moving. But it's not going to happen overnight. You didn't build your sales business overnight. And I think that's something that should not prevent anybody from getting into the business.
That's great.
One of the things I just heard you talk about earlier was this idea of alignment, Elizabeth. And, there's so many different flavors of coaching, right? There's so many different ways that anybody can coach one-on-one or group or, event scale. Like how have you figured out the kind of coaching that is sort of aligned to your unique gifts and what the market needs, right? And the way that you can build a business. How did you kind of step into that, and what have you learned along the way?
So I mentioned that I did a ton of research, and the research really led me to do the group coaching because of that community piece, because of recognizing that more junior agents particularly need other people who are at similar stages on their journey to bounce ideas off of, to become friends with, to have somebody that can be that cheerleader for them. So I naturally got into group coaching just through that research. But what I've also learned about myself, because I'm constantly growing and learning and all that, is that I also thrive in group settings. I look at my history and my background, and I'm like, you were always the one who was hosting the parties. You're always the first person to raise your hand to say, why don't I have the birthday party at my house? Why don't we entertain this weekend? I'm the one who's consistently pulling groups together. And so it makes sense that the research aligned with who I am, and here we are with this program, right? Um, but that doesn't mean that that's right for everybody. And I think recognizing research is for me, it's critical in everything that I'm doing. I think that comes into the feedback too, Danielle, right? That's a form of research. But taking the research and matching it with what you're really good at and who you truly are is where the magic lies, right? Um, I thrive with others. And so I'm never a person who's like good working completely on my own. I love teams. I run a team. I've been on teams, right? So it's a natural sort of fit for me.
Yeah, that makes sense. And it sounds like not only have you liked, you kind of matched up where you liked playing and entertaining and being that one, but it sounds like it's energizing for you too, right? It's giving you energy versus sort of depleting your energy. Is that right? And just paying attention to that. I imagine you're really attuned to that.
Absolutely. And also for my particular lifestyle, right? I mean, Danielle, you shared in my bio, I'm a mom of two. My husband's in the Navy. So with Chip in a role that doesn't have a ton of flexibility, so much of our day-to-day life falls on me, right? If the children are sick, I have to run and get them. If, we have to get to a doctor's appointment or a dentist appointment, I'm doing it. So for me to commit to doing one-on-one coaching on a regular schedule like that is very challenging with my lifestyle. So group coaching not only sort of aligns with who I am and what the research tells me, but it really fits my lifestyle. And so it's like, here we are once a week, and I can have as many women as needed into those groups. And I look forward to them. They do provide such energy to the point where, like, we'll go on vacation and I'll say to Chip, I'm going to be coaching on Friday morning and I'll see you for lunch at the pool. And he's like, you're going to coach while we're on vacation? I'm like, oh, yeah, because I love it.
100%. I'm going to take us back to some leadership questions. I'm very curious about a leadership value or principle that you refuse to compromise on.
Oh, that's such a good question. I refuse to compromise on leading by example. Meaning, I say to my team that it is so critically important that they are a holistic person and that they have their time for themselves and with their family. And I don't just say that, I lead with that. I take weekends off. I don't take phone calls after 7:30 at night. If I do, it's my choice to do it, right? I teach them how to do that by living that way. And I think that there's a lot of leaders who say it, but they don't actually do it. So I will never compromise on showing them the path, not just telling them it.
Everybody listening right now is like, how does she not work weekends and take phone calls after 7:30? So you got to answer that question. How do you do that?
You do it through what I call, it's a sales technique called an upfront contract. All it means is that when you are meeting with everybody for the first time, you're sharing expectations and you're giving your boundaries right up front. So, for example, I'll meet with a buyer client and I'll say to them, I work on these days. There's no such thing as a real estate emergency. You're welcome to reach out to me after 7:30 at night. You very likely will not hear from me, but you'll hear from me in the morning. Does that sound okay? And you get their buy-in. And I will tell you, I have not had any clients push back on that. Every so often, they forget or they get a little heated, and, real estate's very emotional and they'll jump in at a time. But then I always bring back the boundary and bring them back to that. And I think it's just a matter of setting your own expectations and then communicating them. That's all boundary is. I use an example in my coaching in the course portion of it, and it's called a cupcake shop. And it sounds like very simple, but here it is. You think about, you have a cupcake shop in a new neighborhood, right? And you have the best cupcakes recipe that there are. You have a beautiful storefront. How do you get people to the cupcake shop? You've got to do marketing, you have to do all these things, but you also have to set store hours. People are not coming at midnight and you're not opening the door at midnight to sell them a cupcake. This sounds so ridiculously simple because it is. If you're a business owner, you have to treat yourself like a storefront. What are your business hours? What's truly an emergency? What will happen if you don't show that house at 7 o'clock at night? Really, what will happen? It's just, I mean, it sounds simple because it actually is. The reason it's not simple is that people are afraid to say those words. I don't work after 7:30 at night. I don't work on the weekends. And that's where the coaching component comes in. I mean, I didn't get this way overnight, right? Like, there are plenty of people who have pushed me to set my own boundaries.
I love that because it's like to that last statement, I think that's exactly right. I mean, why? Why is a great question as a coach to ask. Why do you think you have to take phone calls after 7:30? Why do you think you have to respond all weekend? Because I think getting to the drivers of what's really going on, and they can be different for different people. We all assume it's just the same thing, but your reason for needing to break that boundary may be very different than somebody else's, and really trying to understand why someone's bringing whatever they're bringing to this seems like a good way to unpack it and try and get past it versus just say, well, that's just what I do. It's like, well, yeah, that's what you do, but why? Why do you do what you do? Right.
I am on a mission to change this 24/7 mentality in this business because it is not serving us. And who's creating the 24/7 real estate mentality? It's us. It's the realtors. It's not our clients. We have set an expectation that has trickled through the entire country in this industry that realtors will pick up the phone at any given moment. I don't even have my phone on a ringer. I think I may have shared that story with you. I just do not allow that. I have to have those boundaries or it would be ringing all day.
Elizabeth, why is that? Why has this industry done that to itself?
I've only been in it for 20 years, so I don't know what it looked like before I got here. But I will say, I think there's a ton of scarcity mentality in this business. This is a business that naturally only thrives on closing transactions. You're not making money unless you are closing transactions, right? So this idea of like, if I'm not available, some other agent will be available and I will lose, 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 lose. It's a scarcity mentality, which I think permeates really everything that we do. Even top agents, even people who are at the, top 1% of producers, they feel I know I coach them. They feel the pressure of like, if I don't answer this phone call, they're going to go to somebody else.
But in your experience, that hasn't been true.
No, it has not been true. I mean, I'm sure I've lost clients over the years. I don't know because I didn't answer the phone. But I'm okay with that because the ones that I do have are the ones that respect me as a professional. They come back again and again and again, and they refer their friends and their family who also rise to that level of partnership, of client and agent in partnership with each other versus this whole idea that like the client's always right, therefore the agent has to fall lower and lower on the scale.
It also just seems like a really great way to mitigate potential conflict, right? Like you're sort of setting that up front. And I'm going to segue into asking you about conflict because I think that in the real estate industry in particular, there's a lot of resistance and not knowing how to handle it. And I'm curious about your perspective, both as a leader and as a coach, right? How has your relationship with conflict evolved, over time? And how do you deal with that? How do you help your clients kind of process that?
Oh, yes. Okay. So like the feedback question, I was terrified of conflict for years. I mean, years of like, I can't make this phone call. I can't do this. I, can't. Of course I could, right? But I was so afraid of it. And over the years, through a lot of coaching, I have come to embrace it. And not that I'm seeking out conflict. That sounds wrong. I've come to embrace it also as a learning tool, right? Of how am I showing up here? And is it truly the level of self-love and self-respect for myself if this person is walking all over me, right? And so it's one of these things that I think with conflict, I used to wake up in the middle of the night. I think a lot of agents can relate to this, thinking about transactions, thinking about clients, thinking about what I could have said differently, what I could have done differently, all of these things. And my husband, who, he's in the Navy, he has to deal with conflict all the time. He's given me a lot of insight into this. And as I'm tossing and turning in the early years of our marriage, he would say, what can you really do in the middle of the night to make this better? And he was so right, like nothing. So then as I evolved through this and learned more about how to embrace conflict and how to really stand up for myself and, still be kind in saying what I want, I use an analogy, and I share this all the time in my coaching. It's called the Thanksgiving table. I want you to picture a beautiful Thanksgiving table. You've got the tablescape, you've got the food, you've got the wine, you've got all these things. And I want you to think about the people who are sitting at that table 5 years from now. 5 years from now. Who are these people? They're the people the closest to you in your life. Those are the people that I will stay up in the middle of the night thinking about. But I promise you, I am not thinking about Joe Schmo client who is having an issue with his home inspection in the middle of the night, because he will not be at my Thanksgiving table in 5 years. And that simple visualization has been enough to help me work through what is important, what I'm going to go to bat for, what I'm going to embrace conflict on, and what I'm going to let slide.
It's a great way to calibrate on that. Thank you.
Elizabeth, what habits or routines are helping you show up as your best self in business and life these days? What are you doing?
So I wake up an hour before my family every day, and that quiet time is so sacred to me. I choose the way every day that I spend it. My morning routine varies a little bit depending on the day, but it always incorporates thinking, reflecting, prayer, whatever, meditation. I do affirmations where every day I read a list of the 10 things that I'm grateful for and the things that I know to be true to set the tone for my day. I write a newsletter. I write that in real time, twice a week. It's something that I love. It's something that relaxes me. It allows me to then start my day entirely for myself. I never touch my cell phone in the first hour that I'm awake, sometimes in the first 2 hours that I'm awake. And it is something that I've had to train myself to do because it's natural that we're going to reach for our messages. But what I've learned in doing that is that the minute I touch that phone, my time is no longer my own. And my day is then set by everybody else's priorities. So that to me is sacred. I think it's made me a better leader. It's made me certainly a better wife and a better mother to have those moments, just an hour, which is a good amount of time for myself.
Do you have a shutdown routine at night?
No, I really need to get one. I was listening. I do, because I was listening to a podcast recently. They were talking about the night routine. And I'm like, I should get a night routine. But I feel like I'm doing well enough with the morning routine because my children are not available while I'm doing my morning routine. I think the night routine is challenging with a 5 and a 2-year-old because our nights are not our own. Many times it's like we're doing bath, we're doing bedtime, who's taking longer to fall asleep, am I falling asleep in there with them, all the stuff. But of course I have a skincare routine because we're never going to forget that in our 40s.
You got that dialed in.
That's maybe I'll light a candle while I'm doing my anti-aging.
Listen.
But no, on that point too, I do put my cell phone away. I will not touch it an hour before bedtime. Yeah. That is not as easy because, I'm always showing my husband something on like Instagram. Like, did you see this? Did we
Yeah.
see that? You know, that's how I shut down at the end of the day.
I think anyone who has children who are 5 and under are just living in survival mode, honestly. It is, when I reflect back, it was absolutely the hardest years of my life. And so it does not surprise me that you're just like so exhausted. I remember being at the end of the day, just so tired, I just fell asleep. There was no shutdown routine. I was lucky if I brushed my teeth.
No, that's exactly, yes. I mean, so no, I think, ask me in 5 years if I have a
Exactly.
night routine, and I'm sure I will have come up with something. I'm just trying to get these kids out of my bed. Like,
That's right. Or they can brush their own teeth and put themselves to bed. Life changes, right?
I keep telling myself, like, I will miss this time. I will miss this time. And I know I will.
Of
But
course.
sometimes I'm like, mommy just really wants to read a book quietly without you climbing all over me. What do you think?
How about we do that? Aw. Well, you inspired me recently to reread The Gap and the Gain. So I am taking on some of those nighttime routines around, defining, sort of searching proactively for the value in the day, right? Like where was the win? And I'm curious, I know you're a really big proponent of this in your business and in coaching, of just women self-advocating for their own value and realizing their own value. And I'd love for you to share with us and the people listening, just, what are some of the ways that you have done that for yourself, and that you're also kind of bringing that into your own coaching work as well?
Yeah, that's a great question. So when when I was building my sales business, and I think a lot of people can relate to this because I've spoken to many agents about this. The transaction closes and you're on to the next. Classic salesperson, right? On to the next, on to the next. What do they say? You're only defined by your next
Last
phrase.
deal.
Last deal. Yeah, that one. And so I was constantly just on to the next, on to the next. And I was never reflecting on what I had done, ever. And so now I incorporate into all of my coaching and in everything that I do a phrase called celebrate the wins. And I start each coaching call by asking everybody to share a win from the week before, professional or personal, right? And I remember I had a new coaching cohort about, 2 months ago, and they had such a hard time coming up with their wins because it didn't feel natural. It doesn't feel natural to celebrate our wins. It doesn't feel natural to pat ourselves on the back. I think women, we're not reared to do that, right? We're not raising our hand and saying, look at me, I did so great. And that uncomfortableness was what I went through too. I found it so hard to look back and see how far I'd come, right? And so now I push women out of their comfort zone to find the wins. And I always say to more junior agents, your wins in the beginning might be that you have a new contact in your CRM. Your wins might be that you got dressed up and went to the sales meeting, but celebrate them. And how are you going to celebrate them? And so when people have closings now, I'll say to them, well, what did you do to celebrate? What have you done? And I think just being conscious of that is the first step in tooting your own horn just a little bit, right? And coming into your self-worth of that's okay. That is okay to raise your hand and say, I'm proud of myself. And if you can't do it for yourself, find somebody that you love and have them promote you. We talked about those little baby steps, asking for feedback. Do the same thing with celebrating wins. If you don't see how great you are, ask somebody that you love to tell you something that they saw in you that you did really well this week. And it will help you to overcome that very weird feeling in the early parts of doing this, of celebrating.
Yeah. I mean, it is really a tolerance that you have to build up, to that goodness. So that's a great way to just sort of step into that. Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
All right. What advice would you give to your 25-year-old self?
Oh, gosh. It's so funny. I have become the woman that I always wanted to be. And that is both a really good thing and also a very bad thing because I'm only 41. So seriously, I am the version of the 25-year-old self that I wanted to become. And now I'm thinking, who am I going to be at 50? Right. So that's why I say it's hard, because you have to then go to the next step. So I think what I would tell my 25-year-old self is that you are stronger than you think. Believe in the path that you want. You might not know every single step, but you have the vision. And the vision will fall in line if you're just open to opportunity.
Have you started to think about the next vision for yourself?
I have a little bit, but not a lot. And I think that's why I say, like, it is a hard place to be. I mean, talk about celebrating a win, right? I look and I'm like, gosh, you have all the things that you wanted for your life when you set that vision. But I'm also a person that I hope I'm the best version of myself the day I die. I hope I'm always growing and becoming greater and giving more and giving back. And so I sort of think, like, well, who is the next version? Who is Elizabeth 5.0? I'm at 4.0, right? I'm in my 40s. And I'm not sure yet. I have some brainstorming to do. I have some thoughts, but I'm not sure.
There is so much going on in real estate right now. I mean, literally every day you wake up to a new headline about something that is shifting, like dramatic, right? Not the little stuff that used to be in the industry, but big things. And I'm wondering, if you could change anything about this industry in this current moment, or wish one thing for this industry, what would it be in light of all of this that's going on right now?
I think this goes back to the scarcity mentality we talked about in this industry. I wish that people would just embrace the change and see this as the opportunity that it actually is. And what I mean by that is, I don't want to live in a static world where things never change, right? Where A becomes B, becomes C, becomes D, and you just keep going on the same path, right? This change, while momentous, is also very opportunistic. It's a great way for us to lean in to the things that are working and eliminate the things that are not working and create a new path to move forward. And so I've seen this as an opportunity really for years now. And my team has leaned into, the decoupling of commission and how we're going to sell ourselves as the compensation that we know we're worth. We've been doing this for years. I wish more people would see this is not scary. It just requires a pivot and some training. And let's be real, there's plenty of things that we can shed from this industry. And it's not a bad thing to do that.
What should we shed, Elizabeth? What should we shed?
I think that we should shed this idea that you can just keep renewing your license by paying a couple $100s and taking a few CE credits. I think that we should have a requirement that you have to have also done a certain number of transactions to be an active real estate professional. Because what happens is the agents who sell full time and have the experience to back them go up against somebody who has sold 2 houses in the last year, but can talk a really good game, right? And our industry allows that. And so it's something that I think really is hurting us, frankly. I think it's really hurting our industry that it's not at that professional level that a lawyer might be, a doctor might be, a financial services professional, right? You take the 24/7 culture of I pick up my phone at any and every time and I jump through hoops to show you a house. And you couple that with someone who's only selling a couple houses a year and has no requirement other than to pay a fee and take a few extra classes to stay in this business. And it downgrades the value of the profession. And that's something that I feel strongly should change in this industry.
I love it. That's awesome. There are a lot of agents, but they're not all selling.
That's right. I
Yeah.
mean, you probably know the statistics more than I do, but it's pretty significant. I mean, the fact that 85% of realtors fail in the first 3 years, according to NAR, that's a problem. And we should take that seriously as an industry. We should really take that seriously as an industry, because that hurts all of us to have such a high fail rate.
What do you wish we asked, or what else is on your mind? Anything?
And this was fun. I enjoyed it. What could you have asked me? I don't know. I feel you guys are very well prepared.
Great. Good.
Aw,
You were great.
that was fun.
Thank
Yes,
you.
you
Thanks
were
for having me.
fantastic.
This has been fun. Yeah.